Many people who do not have deep knowledge in the field of magic try to perform magical rituals, considering it only as an amusing entertainment. However, they do not realize the seriousness of such actions and the danger of contact with the forces on the other side of our world. Fortunately, for most people, everything turns out well. But there are exceptions when people face consequences they didn't foresee. Grace waited impatiently for her parents to go on a business trip and leave her alone for a few days. Finally, that day came. After saying goodbye to her parents, the girl looked around the empty house with joy. The long-awaited days of freedom were upon her. She had thought carefully about how she would spend this time. The plans included parties with friends, binge-watching favorite TV shows, and eating junk food to the brim. But Grace was most excited about the upcoming full moon night, the most mystical time for rituals. The girl had long dreamed of trying an ancient rite of divination using 2 mirrors. There were many stories about it on the internet. It was said that almost everyone had visions in the mirror corridor. Grace had the opportunity to see for herself. It took a few days to prepare. Grace bought vanilla-scented wax candles for the ritual, chose a large antique mirror in a carved gold frame from the living room, and a small mirror from her mother's room. Finally, the night of the full moon arrived. The friends Grace had invited to share the ritual with her refused at the last moment under various pretexts. Nevertheless, the girl decided to do it alone. She waited reverently for midnight and watched from the window as the moon slowly rose above the horizon, illuminating the courtyard with a silvery light. It was time to begin. Grace lit 2 thick wax candles and placed them on either side of the large mirror. The candles flickered, casting bizarre shadows on the walls of the room. The girl took a small mirror in a fine silver frame and placed it against the large mirror, creating a mirrored hallway. She sat down on the floor with her legs under her and stared into the mirror. Her heart pounded uncomfortably as Grace imagined what she might see in the depths of the reflection. A shiver ran down her spine and she glanced around, just in case. The room was dimly lit. Shadows danced on the walls, but there was no one there but her. Grace turned back to the mirrors. Her face looked pale and tense in the reflection. "Show me my soulmate," she whispered, looking into the depths of the corridor, hoping to see the outline of a face. But the mirrors reflected only the dim candlelight and her own troubled face, lost in the distance, growing smaller and blurrier. Suddenly, she thought she saw a figure flicker into the depths and then disappear. Grace strained her vision, peering into the darkness behind the reflections. "Show me my future," she asked softly. But the mirrors were silent. The girl was about to destroy the mirrored corridor when the figure suddenly reappeared. This time it was clearly moving towards Grace, growing larger with each step. The creature looked like a human, but it was moving too fast, bending its limbs unnaturally. Grace stared in horror at the figure that was rapidly approaching her from the depths of the mirrored corridor. One more second, and it would burst out. The girl tried her best to move to overturn the mirrors, but her body was paralyzed. Her fingers dug desperately into the frame of the mirror, but instead of toppling it, they clung even tighter to the carved, gilded frame. Her hands seemed to act beyond her will, refusing to follow the commands of her brain. Her heart sank in horror as a dark, writhing shadow flew through the mirrored surface toward Grace. It darted toward the girl, and in one motion wrapped itself around her neck, squeezing her throat. Grace felt as if her head was being held in a vice, and her eyes darkened from lack of air. She jerked her arms, trying to free herself from the shadow, but the grip only tightened. Black spots danced before her eyes, and she collapsed to the floor, never releasing the unfortunate mirror from her stiffened fingers. Her parents found her the next day. Grace was lying on the floor with a blue face, her fingers still desperately clutching the frame of the mirror. Nearby were 2 burned-out candles, which miraculously had not started a fire. The girl's neck was covered with ominous blue streaks of unknown origin. After performing an autopsy, the coroner confirmed that the immediate cause of death was strangulation. However, he was unable to determine whose hands or what creature could have left such unnatural marks that did not correspond to human ones. It remained a mystery forever.